And now, to throw my support to President Trump, the causes were free speech, the war in Ukraine, and the war on our children. I've already described some of my personal experiences and struggles with the government's censorship industrial complex. I want to say a word about the Ukraine war. The military industrial complex has provided us with a familiar comic book justification, like they do on every war, that this one is a noble effort to stop a supervillain, Vladimir Putin, from invading the Ukraine and then to thwart his Hitler-like march across Europe.
Robert F. Kennedy Jr. just dropped bombshells at his speech as he officially endorsed Donald Trump for president and dropped out of the race. Let's break down some of his harsh criticisms and comments he shared about the modern Democratic Party.
I began this journey as a Democrat, the party of my father, my uncle, the party which I pledged my own allegiance to long before I was old enough to vote. I attended my first Democratic convention at the age of 6 in 1960. And back then, the Democrats were the champions of the Constitution, of civil rights. The Democrats stood against authoritarianism, against censorship, against colonialism, imperialism, and unjust wars. We were the party of labor, of the working class. The Democrats were the party of government transparency and the champion of the environment. Our party was the bulwark against big money interests and corporate power. True to its name, it was the party of democracy. As you know, I left that party in October because it had departed so dramatically from the core values that I grew up with. It had become the party of war, censorship, corruption, big pharma, big tech, big ag, and big money.
Kennedy's speech is a scathing indictment of the Democratic Party, which he claims has abandoned its foundational principles. By invoking his family's legacy, he emphasizes the personal betrayal he feels due to the party's shift towards supporting what he views as corrupt and authoritarian institutions. His departure from the party is framed not as a choice, but as a necessity driven by his values.
When it abandoned democracy by canceling the primary to conceal the cognitive decline of the sitting president, I left the party to run as an independent. The mainstream of American politics and journalism derided my decision. Conventional wisdom said that it would be impossible even to get on the ballot as an independent because each state poses an insurmountable tangle of arbitrary rules for collecting signatures. I would need over 1 million signatures, something no presidential candidate in history had ever achieved. And then I'd need a team of attorneys and millions of dollars to handle all the legal challenges from the DNC. The naysayers told us that we were climbing a glass version of Mount Impossible. So the first thing I want to tell you is that we proved them wrong.
Kennedy critiques the Democratic Party for undermining democratic processes, specifically calling out the cancellation of the primary. His use of the phrase cognitive decline is a direct jab at the current leadership, while his mention of the glass version of Mount Impossible metaphorically illustrates the near-impossible challenges he faced running as an independent. Challenges he proudly notes were overcome.
In an honest system, I believe that I would have won the election. In a system the kind that my father and my uncles thrived in, a system with open debates, with fair primaries, with regularly scheduled debates, with fair primaries, and with a truly independent media untainted by government propaganda and censorship. In a system of nonpartisan courts and election boards, everything would be different. After all, the polls consistently showed me beating each of the other candidates, both in favorability and also in head-to-head matchups. But I'm sorry to say that while democracy may still be alive at the grassroots, it has become little more than a slogan for our political institutions, for our media, and for our government, and most sadly at all for me, for the Democratic Party.
This quote encapsulates Kennedy's belief that the current political system, particularly within the Democratic Party, is fundamentally flawed and corrupt. He contrasts the integrity of past political processes with the present situation, lamenting how democracy has been reduced to a mere slogan. His disappointment with the Democratic Party is palpable, marking a stark departure from his earlier loyalty.
The Democratic Party's censorship of social media was even more of a naked exercise of executive power. This week, a federal judge, Terry Doty, upheld my injunction against President Biden, calling the White House's censorship project, quote, the most egregious violation of the First Amendment in the history of the United States of America. Doty's previous 155-page decision details how just 37 hours after he took the oath of office, swearing to uphold the Constitution, President Biden and his White House opened up a portal and then invited the CIA, the FBI, CISA, which is a censorship agency, it's the center of the censorship industrial complex, DHS, the IRS, and other agencies to censor me and other political dissidents on social media.
Kennedy's accusation of censorship against the Democratic Party is severe, framing it as an unprecedented violation of constitutional rights. By referencing the federal judge's ruling, he bolsters his argument with legal authority, suggesting that the party's actions go beyond political maneuvering and into the realm of unconstitutional behavior.
When a U.S. president colludes with or outright coerces media companies to censor political speech, it's an attack on our most sacred right of free expression, and that's the very right upon which all of our other constitutional rights rest. President Biden mocked Vladimir Putin's 88% landslide in the Russian elections, observing that Putin and his party controlled the Russian press, and that Putin prevented serious opponents from appearing on the ballot. But here in America, the DNC also prevented opponents from appearing on the ballot. And our television networks expose themselves as Democratic Party organs.
This quote is a pointed accusation against the Democratic Party, likening its actions to those of authoritarian regimes. Kennedy's language is deliberate, framing the party's influence over media and its manipulation of the electoral process as a direct assault on democracy itself. By accusing the DNC of acting like a state-run media apparatus, he draws a parallel between their tactics and those of autocratic governments, further justifying his break from the party.
Instead of showing us her substance and character, the DNC and its media organs engineered a surge of popularity for Vice President Harris based upon, well, nothing. No policies, no interviews, no debates, only smoke and mirrors and balloons in a highly produced Chicago circus.
Kennedy's critique of Vice President Harris and the DNC is sharp and unflinching. He accuses the party of manufacturing her popularity without any substantive basis, using spectacle and media manipulation rather than genuine political engagement. And now that he has officially endorsed Donald Trump, you may wonder what is next for him. Donald Trump Jr. suggests we may see him at the head of a three-letter agency.
So, on a closing note here, RFK Jr. for CIA director. Come on.
Yeah, I like that.
We got Mike Walls right here. We got Mike Walls right here. He's on Intelligence Committee.
How about the FDA? How about HHS? Listen, there's a lot of places you could. There's a lot of places that a guy like that I think could do. Great, or sort of a general, Overwatch. So I can think of a dozen roles I'd love to see him in, and I think it'd be great.
Let us know what you think about RFK's latest speech in the comments below.